All right, good morning. Welcome to EclipseCon. Thanks for being here. I'm really excited to see the room packed. It's better than the other way around, and it's because of the topic. So today I would like to get you started with Eclipse Theia, the next generation Eclipse platform. I'm Jonas. I work for EclipseSource. We are a company focused on building tools and IDEs. So we support our customers in building custom IDEs, custom tools for various domains. And in this role, a lot of the new projects that we kick off these days are based on Eclipse Theia. We find it a very interesting choice, and today I would like to answer the most frequent questions if you get started with this technology, and hopefully you go out of the room and have these questions answered. If you have more questions, then this week is actually a very good opportunity to find out. Is the microphone position okay? Because I have a, okay. All right, let's directly dive into that. People are coming. It's obviously an interesting topic, which makes me happy. All right, let's start with the basic question. What is Eclipse Theia? Eclipse Theia is a platform for building web-based tools and IDEs. And these tools and IDEs can then run locally on the desktop or in the cloud. That's the main purpose. That means it's a framework, a technology that helps you if you want to build a tool for any kind of purpose. Now, what does such a platform consist of? What is in this platform? There are many things, but I would like to focus on three in particular. First, it provides you what we call a basic workbench frame. This is the thing that we see here on the right side. It's a window which has a quick access bar. You can add views, you can move them around. You have an editor in the middle, a status bar, a menu bar, and some underlying concepts like preferences, commands, and so on. So all these basic building blocks that you typically want if you want to build a tool. Now, you can adapt all these in Theia, but it comes with some defaults. It makes it very efficient, very easy to get started. You don't have to think about every aspect of the tool from day one. Number two, is a modular extension mechanism. Why is this so important that I put it here on the slide? The basic idea of such a platform is you can reuse many features that are already there. For example, if you need a file explorer in your tool, it's already there, you just need to reuse it. And to be able to combine existing features that are already there with your own custom features, for example, custom views, maybe a custom file explorer, you need some sort of mechanism to combine existing modules with your own stuff. And that's what this module extension mechanism does. If you're familiar with a desktop platform, that's what OSGI did for us. But we have this in Theia too. And third, partially already mentioned, again, very common for such a platform. It comes with a lot of features from the tool IDE area that you can just reuse. For example, there is a code editor, that's the Monaco code editor. You can just add it to your tool. You have code editing, file explorer, Git support, outline view, terminal, all these common features that most tools want to integrate. They're just there, and you can just, using the extension mechanism, add them to your custom product, and then just reuse them. So again, that makes it very easy for you to get started. Now, if we look at all this sounds, for people that know the Eclipse platform on the desktop, this looks very familiar. It's exactly the same concepts. So what's the difference, and why do I claim today that Theia is the next generation of Eclipse? So the detail here is web-based, right? It's a completely new technology stack. It's not like a small evolution. It's really a re-implementation of a platform, and it's completely based on web technologies, meaning TypeScript, HTML, CSS, all these standard technologies that we use in the web for business application these days. So why is this important? So it's based on modern web technologies, and there are many examples. Like, for example, if you want to extend your tool with a new UI, you can use React, Angular, Vue, whatever, name it. All standard technologies in the web field. And in general, Theia uses more standard technologies compared to the Eclipse desktop platform. While, for example, Eclipse desktop had its own widget toolkit, SWT. If you want to implement a tool, you have to learn that. In Theia, you can, for the implementation of the UI, you but you need to know standard web technologies, HTML, CSS, TypeScript, for example, React, which is a huge advantage when you want to start a new project in terms of recruiting, because you don't need people that have this special knowledge about special tool technologies anymore. Of course, there are some aspects that are still special for a tool. For example, if you want to support custom languages, there's this language server protocol that you might be familiar with. But there again, Theia tries to support standards that are already established in the industry. So I would claim the language server protocol, for example, is becoming the de facto standard for programming language support. And again, Theia adapts that rather than reinventing something. We can see that in the code base of Theia. Theia has the core Theia project has around 200,000 lines of code, which is really not much compared to what functionality it provides. And that's only possible because it reuses other technologies, standard technologies, wherever it makes sense. It does not reinvent the wheel. It's really trying to go default wherever it makes sense. Now, in this I would call a differentiator to the existing desktop platform. Now, what's important to note, even though Theia is web-based, you can deploy it as a desktop application using Electron, and that's a very common case. I would claim at least half of the projects go for a desktop application first, but also as a browser application, and then the backend runs in the cloud. You have both capabilities, which is great if you plan the migration of your tool to the cloud. You can still, maybe as a first step, provide a desktop application based on Theia. Then if you move to the cloud later, you don't have to re-implement it. It's actually almost identical what you deploy on the desktop and on in the cloud. So that's a good first migration step. And you are ready for the future then. And finally, I want to mention that too, that falls a little bit under here. Theia supports VS Code extensions. So you might be aware of this huge ecosystem of VS Code extensions that add language features or tool features to VS Code, like for example support for Python, PHP, linting, something in the code editor, you name it. And this ecosystem is actually super huge and super great. Now, Theia decided, okay, we don't want to build our own new ecosystem of these extensions. We rather just support VS Code extension, and we can benefit from this existing ecosystem. And a lot of other tools do the same. So the good news is, if you build your tool based on Theia, you can actually install these VS Code extensions to add new features. So it just embraces, again, what's there rather than pushing another ecosystem for these extensions. All right. So related question to that is raised quite often, is Theia also the next generation Eclipse IDE? Because Eclipse has always been this two things, like a platform and an IDE, meaning something that you can just download and start coding with. Now, Eclipse Theia, and that's important to note, the project is not an IDE. That's not the primary focus at the moment. But it is a platform. However, there's one differentiation here. The Theia project provides a tool called Eclipse Theia Blueprint. And as the name implies, this is kind of the default template tool based on Theia that you can download, use. It has an installer. You can use it for your daily work. The special focus of this tool is to be a template if somebody wants to build something similar. If you want to build a custom tool, the Theia project, we want to provide you with a template that can look at how to combine stuff, how does it look like. You can immediately try it, how to install stuff, how to build an installer, how to do the update mechanism, and all this is basically what Theia Blueprint provides. And I have a weird animation. Yeah, that's Blueprint. You can get it from the Theia website. So what are tools then based on Theia? Just to give you an impression, here's are some tools based on Theia. This is by far not a complete list. Part of the reason is we don't know all the tools because not all companies that build on Theia let us know. Often it's internal tools, so we have no clue. Maybe we find some questions that certain people raise in the forum, but we don't track that. What's especially, so we have here, for example, Embed Studio from ARM. We have the Google Cloud Shell. We have Code Anywhere. The last four are bold because they are publicly visible. And if you go to the conference website and access the slides, which are already published, you can click those links and directly look at these tools. For example, here the new Arduino IDE is based on Theia. That's an open tool that you can just download. And which companies are contributing and adopting Theia. So this is what we have on the website. This is just based on if the companies are willing to put their logo here. Again, this list is not complete, but you can see it's a lot of companies that already built on Theia, and it's growing kind of every week. We have a new PR adding a new logo, and really very small companies, very big companies, completely a good diversity. All right, now I've mentioned VS Code a couple of times. So what are similarities to VS Code and what are differences? I explicitly focus on this question because that's a very important question in the beginning of your project. And the reason for that is I'm not saying that Eclipse Theia is the right solution for every project, and that's an important thing. You really should evaluate the best solution for your project first and then decide. VS Code and Eclipse Theia are kind of the most common choices in our days. That's why I explicitly compare these two. And there are other choices, of course, too. So if you plan a project and you have more detailed questions, talk to me. I'm here the full week. But what are the similarities to VS Code? What are the differences? And how can you decide for your project in a nutshell, on a high level? Obviously, Theia is inspired by VS Code, and we use a lot of VS Code technology. Again, we don't reinvent the wheel. Doesn't make sense because I would claim all Theia committers actually like the way how VS Code is built and like to use it because it has a great usability concept. So Theia uses the Monaco code editor. That's this very powerful code editor in the middle, which language server protocol support. Which, by the way, is a huge component that we don't have to develop and maintain, which adds, removes a lot of the lines of code that we have in the Theia project. The standard usability concept, for example, the quick access bar, focus on keyboard. There are some deviations. Typically, Theia is more flexible. So, for example, we have a toolbar. We can move windows more around. We can detach windows in Theia and so on. But the basic usability concept is from VS Code. However, in Theia, you can adapt and deviate from that in your custom tool. We have to deliver some sort of default, but you can heavily deviate from that. You can completely white label Theia-based application and change kind of everything. And the third, I mentioned that we support the extension model, VS Code extensions, that is also defined by VS Code. So now what are the differences on a conceptual level? And that's really important. That this is where all the other differences come from. VS Code is built as an extensible code editor. That's what they have on their website. That's their primary focus. So it's a tool that you can download, and then via this VS Code extension mechanism, you can add features to it. Theia, on the other hand, is a platform. So it puts platform first to build custom tools and IDEs. That means VS Code is already a tool, while Theia is a platform, and then based on this, you have all these tools like Kyle Studio, Arduino, and for example, Theia Blueprint that we already provide. But that's really the main differentiator. And Theia really puts platform first, while VS Code doesn't have an interest, at least this is something you can derive from statements that they do. They don't have an interest to be a platform. Their focus is to build a code editor that is really working great and that you can extend with to a certain extent. Now, what are the unique selling points in Theia then compared to VS Code, but also to other tools? You have a lot of flexibility. You can the core in Theia has a modular architecture, so you cannot only extend a tool like in VS Code, but you can also override stuff. You can remove features. You can change really the structure of the application to a core level because Theia has a modular architecture. And you have full API access. You don't have that in VS Code and other tools. So what does that mean? Some examples. So as I mentioned previously, you can actually completely white label full application, add your logo anywhere, really change the style of all elements. But one very obvious example, in Theia, we can support a toolbar. We actually have this. You can add the toolbar to your tool if you want to. Very difficult in VS Code. I mean, it has been requested thousands of times. They say we don't want that, which is completely fine. I mean, it's their UX decision. In Theia, because we are a platform, we cannot know whether you want the toolbar in your tool or not. So we provide it, you can add it or not. Support for non-text editors. It's possible in other platforms, but it's very convenient in Theia because you can really integrate your editor with all other mechanisms like the problems view, the the file explorer and so on. So if you build something that is not text-based, like graphical-based or form-based, Theia might be a good option. And a very common example, remove stuff that is there. So if you don't want to have a compile button, or if you don't want to have a certain command or something, you can very easily remove stuff in Theia. Also not possible in other platforms. Another very core differentiation to other platforms is the openness and, as we call it, meritocracy. Theia is a project hosted at the Eclipse Foundation, so it's an Eclipse project, and it's really, it has an open governance. And that means it's vendor neutral. That doesn't mean there's no one single vendor that can make the decisions here. It's really a diverse community, and if you contribute to the project, you can also influence decisions. This is very important if you strategically decide for a technology in your project, that you actually have at least the chance to control the direction of this project. And also, for example, if you, you should observe the project health of the technologies that you adopt and make sure, okay, it's developing in the right direction, it's maintained correctly, and so on, and who's behind that. So, and all this data is very transparent in Theia. It's a growing community, but it's important because typically tools are not re-implemented every day. So if you now strategically select technologies for a tool, this decision will probably be valid for at least 5 or 10 years. So everything is open source, literally everything. There's no proprietary part. And just examples. So detachable views, that's another feature that has been discussed in the web space a lot, because all web, actually it got lost on the way to the web. So all web-based tools, at least I'm not aware of any web-based tools that has detachable windows. In Theia, different parties identified, hey, we actually want that. So let's look at that, and there was actually a collaboration going on between different companies that contributed or started to work on this feature and now contributed a first version. So we have this, you can actually see it in the afternoon in the news and noteworthy section. So I would claim we have the first web-based tool, at least, that supports detachable window. I personally have not seen it in a web application at all, that you can actually extract something. Yeah. And another example is adaptations of the development process. For example, we recently added a new type of release that we call community release, again, based on the feedback of the adopters we have, so you can even influence the way how the project operates. All right, so we talked a lot about, so now I want to switch a little bit more into architectural information. These are really some aspects that I pick. I cannot really provide full technical introduction to Theia, but the most important concepts to understand. Now, one thing that is important to know in Theia, we have 2 different ways of implementing features, 2 module system. One is VS Code extensions that you might be familiar with, and one is Theia extensions. And the way how this is actually built is, in VS Code, you have the core, which is a black box, and if you add a feature via a VS Code extension, it operates via a defined API that is limited and defined to exactly what they expose. These things even run in a separate process, so it's kind of an external mechanism. In Theia, a Theia extension is an internal concept, and that actually adds flexibility here. So a Theia-based application is completely built up of modules called Theia extensions, and you can add your own here, and that gives you full power in terms of what you can achieve with them. Now, I mentioned before that Theia also supports VS Code extensions, so there is now actually one of these Theia extensions that then opens the API to VS Code extension to support this mechanism too. So in Theia, we have actually both this heavyweight but very powerful mechanism of Theia extensions that you can use to completely tailor your application, and VS Code extensions to add existing features and just consume them. So it's actually full flexibility in this sense. Now, how do you get started with Theia in terms of development? What's the first thing you do? If we imagine a Theia-based product that we want to build, the first thing that you typically do is you look at existing Theia extensions, like existing module, and define, okay, what do I want to have in my tool? I don't know, a file explorer, the code editor, an outline view, I don't know. The same with VS Code extensions, so you might, an area where we typically include VS Code extension is language support. Like, for example, I want support for Java and TypeScript. Now you have this list, and the first step that you do is you define all these modules to include in the product configuration. It's a package JSON file at the end, but it's basically a list of things that are part of your product. And this is the first artifact that actually goes into your local development workspace. So it's just a description, okay, these are the existing things. And then with that, you can already build an application that runs in the browser and in Electron. This is kind of the minimal Theia product. You don't have code. You don't have to code anything. And it's actually even valuable if you just want to reuse and package existing stuff. Of course, the next step would then typically be to add some own features. And again, you can do that as Theia extension and as VS Code extension. This often makes sense. So what many projects that we observe do is actually building all the core features and the core frame of their application as Theia applications. And then they might have some features, for example, if they support a custom language, custom DSL, you add that as a VS Code extension because some APIs are actually often used from VS Code extension. The other advantage there is the features that you build as a VS Code extension, you can also provide to VS Code users. And for example, let's assume you have a custom tool, you really want to tailor that. So Theia is your choice. Use this mechanism to create the custom tool. And you also have an own language, but you also want to enable people that don't use your custom tool, but for example, VS Code, to use your language support. You can easily achieve that by providing this as a VS Code extension. All right, high-level architecture of a Theia-based product. Every Theia-based product consists of a front end and a back end. Front end is for the UI concerns, everything that you see essentially. Back end for the business logic, compilation, stuff like this, has access to the file system. Front end runs in a browser engine. Back end runs on Node.js, but you can very easily also integrate other technologies like Java, C, basically call them from there. And now you have these two possibilities. Either you deploy these separately, so this runs on the server in the cloud, this runs in the browser, then you have a cloud deployment, or you combine both in Electron, then you have a desktop application. Now, how to kick off a Theia product if you wanted to start it right after this talk. We have a Yeoman generator that can generate a standard project for you with various different features already in it, so definitely worth to check out. And it already generates all build scripts for you. You can simply run Yeoman and then build the product and already see it. Another good way to get started if you want to build a desktop project is Theia Blueprint, which is of course also fully open source. It also shows you how to create installers for desktop applications. Now, what are other resources that you might consume if you want to get started with Theia? We have online documentation. It's not perfect, but we have improved it really a lot last year. So have a look at it and please report if you're missing something. The Yeoman generator, we have the link here. And again, the slides are already uploaded, so you can find the link there. You don't have to copy it. Ask questions in the community chat. So we have really a very active community chat, a lot of people answering there. Our hero is Vince, who answers faster than anyone else, but a lot of other people contribute to that too. So that's really a helpful place to get answers. And of course, this week there are quite a lot of Theia core committers here. So take the opportunity to talk to them. You can talk to me. Who's committing to Theia, committer? Remember the faces. All right. And I have an FAQ article that points you to some other resources as an overview. How to communicate with the community. The community forum that I mentioned, GitHub issues, that's our primary platform. So if you have some issues, please report them. That's really a valuable contribution. So we really want you to report your issues so we can help you. We have a weekly developer call that is open for everyone. You also find that on the website. You can just join there. I really recommend if you consider Theia for your next project, join there, meet the people, ask questions. So it's a really very friendly and open community. And it's probably also good for you to meet the people behind the project before you actually make a strategic decision to go for such a technology. And we have events like EclipseCon, and I also want to highlight there will be a TheaCon this year. You find the link on the website. You can submit talks there, and it's a virtual 2 days event where you can again learn more around Thea. Now, if you adopt the technology and you want to start contributing to it, which is of course probably not the first thing you do, but you might want to do that later. For example, to fix issues, add features you want, or in general contribute to the project to strategically improve it. So what are the ways of contributing? And I want to keep this short. Ask questions, that's already a contribution. If we can understand what you're struggling with, we can help you and we can improve documentation. Answering question, if you know the answer, help others. Report bugs, report feature requests, even like if you miss something, please report that. Even if you don't contribute that, we want to learn what the community and adopters want. If you have the ability to, please provide pull requests and fix features and bugs. And also tests, if possible. And of course, we're also happy if you improve the documentation. That's a typical first contribution. Somebody reads the documentation, is fine with it, but finds one little error there. It's really appreciated if you directly fix them, or at least tell us. Now, one quick thing that I want to mention, especially if you're coming from the Eclipse desktop platform. Thea is one step, but as I mentioned, the complete technology stack is new, so you might need replacements for many other things too. Now, this list is not like complete, but I just want to give you some pointers on where you might look at if you, for example, have a diagram. So we have the Eclipse platform, could go to Thea. The workbench, all these APIs, again, either VS Code API if you use VS Code extensions or Thea extensions. SWT and JFace, the GON. It's HTML, TypeScript, and the technology of your choice. React, Vue, Angular. I would say React is probably most common. Language support, definitely language server protocol in combination with TextMate. For debugging, you have the debug adapter protocol, and there are some specific extension points to there. Xtext, you can use Xtext in Thea too. You can create language servers with Xtext, and there's a new framework written in TypeScript called Languium that is also, I think, presented in another talk tomorrow, so search the program for it. Diagrams, GMF or GEF. There is the Eclipse graphical server platform. That's a project called GLSP. That's pretty much like LSP for textual editors for graphical one, and there's a talk today about that. I have that on the next slide. The EMF ecosystem, there's a new project called EMF Cloud. Form-based UIs, if you use EMF forms, there's now JSON forms. And Eclipse CDT, there's a new project called cdt.cloud. So you see, we often just add cloud and then do the same as we did the last 20 years, but based on TypeScript. No, but seriously, these are just some pointers. There's, of course, more. All right. Some pointers to other talks. cdt.cloud, I think that's even the next session. So if you are in the embedded space, this is also heavily related to Thea that might interest you. We have another Thea-based talk about news and noteworthy, going a little bit more into detail after that. So that's the session after the session. And we have a BOF this evening, which is an informal session where you can come and ask questions and discuss and meet the people behind these projects. It's today in the evening after the Kahoot game. Eclipse GLSP, there's a talk today at 5 o'clock, given by Philip. Thea.cloud, that's a topic that I didn't cover at all. If you're striving towards an online hosting for your Thea-based application, this is actually a fairly new project that can help you with that. So if you're interested in that topic, make sure to join this talk tomorrow. All right. Yeah, that was it from my side. Before I open it up for questions, I would like to mention that you can evaluate the sessions in your app. So it should actually tell you after this session to evaluate it. So please tell your honest opinion. It helps us to design the program for next year. And of course, it's nice for the speakers. And with that, I think I'm good in time, and we have time for questions, right? Yeah, there's a question. I can also repeat them, maybe.
blueprints for more specific use cases, like it was, for example, if I'm a Java developer or a contributor, maybe I would like to have something that I do not have to customize by myself.
Yeah. So the question is whether the project plans to provide more tailored blueprints, for example, for Java development, for web development, and so on. So currently there are no plans inside the Theia project because we kind of make a strategic decision at the moment to put platform first and make a perfect job in that. It might change if there is a party which is interested in that. The general thing is, if we provide a custom tool for a certain space, then we immediately compete with other tools that are out there. For example, VS Code, but also other options, and that's not our primary focus at the moment. Our primary focus is really to enable creating these tools. Yeah, that's it. But it's an open discussion, so we have this topic on the plate every now and then, because it's a major difference currently compared to the desktop world. Do you want to comment on that?
Theia is not an IDE.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand this. Sorry, just to add a thing, but I'd like to report my experience. Like, I am a Java developer. I was searching on a way to jump on Theia, and it wasn't very quick. I had to find some project written by someone else to, yeah. Or the alternative was to tailor it by myself, which is not really for someone that doesn't know the project. It's not a simple thing.
Yeah. So, I don't know when you did this, but what I would ask you, what we are really interested in is maybe a quick description of your journey. Like, I was here and I was expecting to find this information, because the hardest part in this documentation is really to see where are people entering and what links and what description should we provide there. Because if you know all this stuff, it's very hard to determine that. So if you could just very informally say, okay, I was here and I didn't find this, and I found this very late. These kind of things are super valuable for us because we really want to improve the first touch journey. That would be great. So sorry, Matthew, or do you want to comment on that?
I just wanted to say also, if it's possible, can you share what expectations you had, not just what you were doing, but why you wanted to do it, because that would be able to better advise the documentation too.
Sure.
Sebastian.
You explained the extension mechanisms, and one thing that you said caught my attention, that was I could either use VS Code extensions or the more heavyweight.
Yeah, heavyweight is wrong. I take that back. So in a sense, you could call VS Code extension very lightweight because they're in this external process and they're not really completely wired. But like Theia extensions are not heavyweight; they're just a core concept. Yeah. So I remember saying that, but like after I said it, yeah.
Forget about that. And these extensions, can they randomly interact with each other, or do I have to open my extension with a certain kind of API to make it available to others?
Yeah. So they are wired via dependency injection. So you have to kind of foresee that certain things are accessed by other extensions, and of course there need to be interfaces in terms of code. So it's not that you can literally access everything, but typically all extensions or core services are wired via dependency injection anyway. So that's why you have almost full flexibility there, and if not, you can still adapt it. Yeah. So you.
So going back 20 years ago, all your acts and attributes would be applicable to Eclipse. Very generic, never seen before, awesome platform. Now 20 years now, most of the companies you showed were based on Eclipse and they moved away. How do you prevent that people who just want an awesome editor will stick to the platform, to your editor?
Okay, so the question was that 20 years ago, basically, someone could have a similar presentation about Eclipse, and now 20 years later, people are switching to this new platform, and how can we prevent in 20 years that the same happens again? Very difficult question. I don't know. 20 years in computer science is like it's like a lifetime. I just think that there will probably in the future be some technical revolutions again. One very different thing that I see in Theia compared to Eclipse back then is that one general trend in the whole Theia architecture is to go more standard. If you look at the technology stack, it's that most core technologies are overlapping with business application, meaning what you typically use for business applications these days. For example, React. So it's not that special, it's not that niche anymore, which I would claim it raises the probability that these technologies are maintained and available for a longer time. But of course, like if you set now such a platform and strategically do that, the best thing you can actually do is also join contributing, because then you can influence exactly what you just described. And I think, I mean, that happened for the Eclipse IDE too, partly. My wish for Theia would be is that it happens earlier compared to the desktop platform, because the desktop platform, I mean, it was mainly driven by IBM initially, which I think we're all super thankful for, and then it had a little bit of hard time to migrate to a more diverse contributor model. In Theia, I would claim we are already very diverse from the beginning, but the more the better, and the more stable such a platform gets. So if you plan to strategically adopt Theia, I would also immediately think about, okay, how can we contribute to the long-term availability of such a platform? So there was a question here.
Yeah, coming from the Eclipse RCP world, are there, I was wondering where Theia is in terms of like more advanced kind of workbench management type, like task-focused user interfaces, what we call perspectives, right? Or
Yeah.
be able to say that. I'm not trying to recreate Eclipse RCP at Theia, but just wondering where you're at there.
So the question, I hope I repeated right, is so coming from Eclipse RCP, are there advanced features like perspective management and in general window? So perspectives, no. But perspectives have always been, I mean, there was no perspective support in E4 for a very long time, but it was pretty easy to implement that. So it's currently not a concept that is supported by Theia Core, but I would claim it's probably very easy to add that. Besides that, we use an external library as a window management. So we don't implement that from scratch. And from a flexibility point of view, it's pretty much like a desktop application, which on the other hand, most other web-based tools currently don't support dragging everything everywhere. We currently allow that. Yeah. There's a question over there. How much time do you still have?
Yeah, just wondered, is there any support for multi-tenancy built into
In the tool itself?
Yeah, backend server, is it one server per user? Or?
Yeah, so it's currently, very interesting question. So it's currently one server per user, actually. We started to experiment with several users per server, because I think one of the next challenges and problems that cloud-based tools have to solve is the resource consumption. Because currently what we do in every tool that I'm aware of does is just taking all the backend parts that you also kind of have in the desktop tool, throwing them in a virtual machine or container, and then running them in cloud, which doesn't really increase efficiency. And the reason why this actually pops up is suddenly there are new costs, because they run in the cloud and somebody has to pay for that. On the local machine, on the desktop, it was already paid for by infrastructure, like since forever. But in the cloud, suddenly it becomes transparent. So exactly what you described, connecting, for example, several users to one server, or for example, extracting certain parts of the tool into a commonly used node. Like for example, if 1,000 people work on the same project, with a big code base, you actually don't have to build the index of the existing library like 10,000 times. You could potentially share that. So I would hope and claim that is probably the next area of innovation to get that under control. So currently no, but we are under the hoods, like these are our innovation projects at the moment. Yes.
Were you talking about the project J?
No.
Is it something different?
Yeah. So what J actually does, it provides a solution to host one workspace per user. And for example, Theia.cloud is another solution for that. But it doesn't solve the problem, like it doesn't go in the direction, at least, I don't know whether somebody from J is here, maybe they're doing or investigating something similar. But what it doesn't do is one tool virtual machine on the server and several users connect to the same to share the resources, because otherwise you basically have one process, one container per user consuming the memory and the power per user. So it doesn't scale very well, right? And for example, yeah, like things like compilation, you could potentially also put them into a separate node that has a lot of memory, a lot of power, and then you can, for example, could make the developer node smaller and stuff like this. But this is really, this is, I would say, the next area of innovation.
Well, compilers are expensive in terms of RAM and processor, so that would be something like a bottleneck anyway. If you put a compiler inside an own container or in a very big, very powerful machine where, like a mainframe, where everybody's compiling, you still need resources, right?
Yeah, but the difference is you don't need the resources, like you don't have to reserve them the whole time, right? Because a compilation, you only trigger then, and but yeah. But it's not trivial. It's not as easy as like just do it. It's needs some development. Okay, I think we're okay. One last question. Is it?
Okay, it's a very short question. You said the backend is based on Node.js. It is implemented in JavaScript or TypeScript?
TypeScript. Yeah. All right. If you have more questions, please talk to me, talk to other Theia committers. We have a booth which is there at the second stairway on top, EclipseSource. I'm usually there if you have more questions. And thank you so much for joining today.